In the first section of this course, we're going to start talking about schemas. And we'll go into a little bit more depth about what schemas are and why they matter for how we think socially. But to begin, what I want you to do is to think about what comes to mind when you think about the concept of autumn. Spend a moment, imagine that season of the year, and think about what other kinds of associations come to mind for you. For example, when I do this exercise, I think about the concept of autumn, and one of the first things that comes to mind for me, at least, is the idea of leaves, because leaves change color, they fall off the trees in autumn, and also things like chili, comfort, cider, Halloween, apples. All of these are kinds of things that come associated with the idea of autumn, at least as it is in my own mind. You might also think of another term like snow, but for you and me both, unless, maybe you live somewhere where snow happens in the autumn, but at least for me, I don't think of snow when I think about autumn. This isn't part of that set of representations. And altogether, what this illustrates is that our minds are really good at linking concepts together. When we think of an umbrella category like autumn, we automatically come up with all sorts of individual beliefs and associations that get linked with that general concept. And this can be really helpful. For example, imagine it's October 15th, we're right in the middle of autumn, and we have to ask ourselves when we wake up in the morning, what are we going to wear? Now, if we didn't have this kind of linkage of associations, we would be totally lost. We would go, I don't know, it's October 15th. I guess I have to check the weather, look at that temperature, then make a decision based on that temperature. I don't know, is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? But instead, we come with a ready-made association with the time of year we're in, and we know about how cold it's going to be. We know about how rainy it tends to be around this time. And so we automatically make inferences about how the day is going to go based on our association with the time of year, even though we're not going to go ahead and look for every single new piece of information that's going to help us make that decision. And in general, this is the idea of a schema. And when we talk about schemas, what we're talking about are mental frameworks that bundle knowledge together in an organized way. In the same way that autumn comes ready-made with associations like chili and cider and Halloween, all those kinds of associations, anything in our mind is linked with these bundles of knowledge. In general, these are stored in memory, and so we're not coming up with these associations brand new every time. We're relying on things that are already in our memory. It helps us interpret the world, like I mentioned with the example with what to wear. It helps us give us a better sense of what's going to happen and make sense of what happens in our everyday lives. And they make decisions more efficient and quick. Rather than go to the weather website and check for sure what the temperature is likely to be and gather all sorts of information, instead I get to quickly make a judgment about what I'm going to wear on a given day. You can think categories when you think about schemas. In general, that's what we're talking about. And the image I have here is of a file drawer. So the way I think about a schema is if you open up a file drawer and I look for the folder marked autumn, when I open up that folder, there's all sorts of documents inside about what is associated with autumn, the things I already know in my mind as being linked with autumn, so I can make reasonable interpretations of things. Here's another example of a schema, and I'll show you how this could be useful also. You might have a schema about an abstract category of people, like police. So you think of police, and you might then also have thoughts about sirens and radar and citation and batons and arresting, all these kinds of things that are associated with police. They come to mind really readily, and this can be really helpful when we're confronted with someone who we categorize as a police officer. So imagine you're in that circumstance and you meet someone and you find out they're a police officer. Automatically, you start to make assumptions about that person, not because of stuff you know about this individual, but because of things you have associated with the category they belong to. You also might be driving down the road and you see in your rear view mirror a police car behind you. You automatically start to make judgments about your situation rather than go, oh, there's a car and it has some lights on it. No, you automatically, at least if you're me, you start to get nervous as though, oh, did I do something wrong? I have no idea what's going on. I should get out of the way. You come with a behavioral script. All these kinds of things are associated with a category that is in your awareness, and it all is linked together in memory. We can have schemas about all sorts of things. For example, we might have schemas about different roles that we play, different social roles. So if I find out that someone's a mother, I might have different associations with that role than if I find out that this person plays some other kind of social role. We also have schemas about groups. These are stereotypes. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but this is a very social way in which we use schemas to make assumptions about people, to judge people, and to make decisions that are based on stereotypes rather than individual information. We also have schemas about individual other people. You might have a set of associations linked in your memory with a particular friend of yours, so you're able to understand that person, make predictions about what that person is going to do, and interpret the things you see that person doing. We also have schemas about situations, so I may have a different schema about my workplace than about being at a party. I have a disco ball here. I don't know how many parties you go to with disco balls, but it's a pretty good illustration there. You also have schemas about yourself. And we'll talk later in this course about these kinds of schemas as they relate to the self-concept, and this is all the associations and beliefs you have when it comes to when you think about your own self. And also different schemas about relationships. Your expectations of how behaviors are going to play out in a significant relationship interpersonally, like with a significant other, may be different than your expectations of how things will play out in a relationship between yourself and a coworker. So all of these different kinds of social variables come with them sets of associations and beliefs, which are what we call schemas. Okay. I'm going to read off a list of words here. We're going to do just a little break in the pattern. And all I want you to do is to pay attention to the list of words that I'm about to read off. No need to pay super close attention, but just listen as I read them out. Bed, rest, awake, tired, dream, wake, snooze, blanket, doze, slumber, snore, nap, peace, yawn, drowsy. Okay, so hopefully you were able to hear all of those and process them however you would like, and we'll carry on now with the next part. Whoop, surprise! We're going to have a quiz. All right, I know I didn't tell you to actually remember and memorize the list of words, and that's the point. I'm going to now ask you if you saw any of these words or heard any of these words in the list that I just read out, and just answer as honestly as you can. Aloud if you would like, if you are alone or with friends, but silently if you so choose. Okay, was the word dream on the list of words that I just read out? Answer to yourself. Commit to your answer, yes or no. Was it on the list or not? Was the word shoe on the list that I read out? How about the word yawn? And the word sleep? Okay, think through those. Were those on the list? Were they not on the list? Each individual one, come up with an answer for it. Now, for the first one, for dream, if you said that it was on the list that I read out, then congratulations, your memory is impeccable. Dream was, in fact, on the list of words that I read out. Shoe, however, was not, and you likely thought that that was the case. You likely didn't remember hearing shoe in the list of words that I read. Yawn was, in fact, on the list, but sleep is the interesting one, because you likely thought it was on the list, and you might even be really confident that it was on the list that I read out, but go ahead and go back and listen to that list again, because it was not read out. Sleep was not on the list of words. And yet, most people, when they hear that list and then are asked these questions, most people remember hearing the word sleep, but it wasn't. It was just related to all the words that you did hear. So here are the words that you heard. They're all related to one another within the schema of sleep. So bed, rest, yawn, nap, all of those are sleep-related words. And so what this shows is that we don't remember things necessarily as they actually happened, but that our schemas help us fill in the blanks in our memories. We don't remember things as true or as they actually happen. We encode them as kind of a gist. Right, so you remember, a bunch of sleep-related words, and that drives your memory more than the individual words themselves. So I mentioned stereotypes. If I want to define stereotypes for you as a social kind of schema, they are beliefs about the attributes, characteristics, and behaviors of members of various groups. Here's a case in which you use a schema sometimes to understand an individual person, by using the group to which you think that person belongs. So you might use a gender stereotype to understand what an individual man is like, even though what you're using is a general gender-based memory framework rather than information about that individual person. So what do schemas do for us? If we have them and they are the way in which our mind works, there must be some function to it. And one thing it does is it guides our memory of what we've done and seen. Most of the time, this helps us tremendously, so we don't have to remember every detail. We kind of get the gist of things, and usually that is accurate. But as we've just seen, sometimes it can lead to the wrong conclusion. Schemas can direct our attention. We pay more attention to things that confirm what we already have in our schemas. When an expectation is present, we might be more likely to look for evidence that confirms it. And schemas also help us fill in missing information. So if you hear a story and you don't get all the details, as long as you're able to see connections with a general schema that you have for a story like that, you use your schema to fill in the blanks and not necessarily the direct information you're given. And also it can help us predict behavior and future events. So I might have a schema of a particular friend of mine, which helps me understand what's likely to happen when I go to dinner with that friend, for example. I'm using a set of expectations rather than really treating it in a concrete, objective way. So in summary, schemas are mental frameworks. They're important to understand because they speed up how we think, and for the most part, they're helpful. Schema processing is a really good way of efficiently thinking through things, but as we've seen, sometimes if we over-rely on them, they can lead us astray.